guys, it's Miss Simpson and it's time for reading today. This week we are working on poetry. So I want you to think back, use your little noggin and go back to Christmas time. What do you remember us talking about around Christmas time about poetry? Now I know that was a long time ago and I know that you've had a week full of snow and fun, but try and remember what happens in poetry. What kind of poems are there? What do we see in poetry a lot of the time? I hope you were like, oh, Miss Simpson, oh my gosh, I know that there's figurative language in poetry. And Miss Simpson, oh my gosh, I know there are stanzas in poetry. And Miss Simpson, oh my gosh, almost all poems, not all poems, but some poems rhyme. Well, today we are going to talk about different elements that you are going to see in some poems. So let's talk about a line break. A line break is where each line of text ends in a poem. So I'm going to show you a quick example of a poem you're going to see later on in the week. So every time you see the end of a line, that's a line break. So we see right here the end, line break, end, line break. That's just the end of a line in a poem. A stanza is a group of lines within a poem. So I like to think of stanzas kind of like a paragraph in a poem. So if I take a look at this poem you're going to see later on in the week, I can clearly see some stanzas right here. So if I drew a line right there, I could see this is a stanza, this is a stanza, and this is a stanza. What about rhythm or rhyme? So a lot of you know what rhyme is, but it's a pattern of stressed syllables or rhyming words. So rhythm is kind of like when your poem has kind of like a song, a sing-songy feeling to it. A rhyme is when the end of the lines rhyme. So sometimes all of them will rhyme, sometimes a couple of them will rhyme. It just depends on the poem that you have. So you always take a look at the last word in the poem to see if it rhymes. So here I see meows, cats, rambunctious, out, and one. And none of those words rhyme. So that poem doesn't rhyme. But let's look at this one. Plate, mind, out, clay, weight, couch. None of those rhyme. So that's not a poem that rhymes. But a lot of the times you will see a poem that the last word in that on the line break, the last word before the line break, it rhymes. Let's talk about repetition. Poets like to use repetition, and that is when words are repeated in a poem, and it's to show importance. And that's something that we're going to see in our poem today that we look at. Meter. This one might be new for you. You might not have learned this yet. Now, meter is a basic rhythmic structure of a line in poetry, and it's kind of tricky. But it's the number of syllables and the syllables that show emphasis in that line. Again, it makes it kind of have sort of like a rhythm to it, a sing-songy. And I will show that to you when we get there. Now, these three down here are really important because they are figurative language. Now, poets love figurative language because figurative language creates a picture in your brain. And we're going to talk about visualization tomorrow, but that's a huge thing in poetry. And one way that a poet does that is by imagery. Now, imagery is when we use words to paint a picture in our head using our five senses. Right now, can you tell me what the five senses are? Let me hear you. Taste. Good one. Smell. Touch. Hearing. Did you get all of them? Sight. I didn't say sight. Okay. Let's talk about alliteration. Now, alliteration is when we have the same sound or letter at the beginning of words or lines. Now, guess what? I am going to give you a hint. This is the poem you're using today. I noticed the very first line, aves, yielding, idly. Sand slipping, slow summertime strolls. There is a ton of alliteration in the poem that you're going to see today for your independent work. And also onomatopoeia. Those are words that make a sound. So let's take a look at this poem. Smack, crack. Those are all onomatopoeias. Boom, bang, pow, smash. Those are all onomatopoeias. Now, I'm going to show you one more thing back to that repetition in this poem. I remember. So clearly, her remembering something is very important because she repeats a million bazillion times. So let's take a look at some poems that I have. Well, just one really. But this is a book of poems that I have. And I wanted to show you this one. It is called Frozen Solid. So let's take a look. The first thing that I notice, the first thing that I'm looking at is this is what your assignment's going to look out today. You're going to find 4 elements of poetry and you're going to tell me their purpose, just what you think is their purpose. So let's first, and everybody should be able to do this with their poem today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark my stanzas. So automatically I see I have 1, 2, 3 stanzas. Remember, stanzas are like like paragraphs in a poem. So now that I've kind of noticed that there are 3 stanzas, I'm going to go ahead and put a poetry element of stanzas. Now, what is a stanza? What did I tell you a stanza was? Well, guess what? On the anchor chart that your teacher's going to post right down below, we have given you what each of these things are. All you have to do is find them and then tell me. So stanzas, and I'm going to put like a paragraph, which is a group of lines. It's a group of lines. So now as I'm reading, I'm going to go through and I'm going to find maybe a couple more examples, actually 3 more examples of the elements of poetry, and I'm going to write them down for you, and then I'm going to show you what your independent work is. Okay, so let's go ahead and read it. Frozen solid, if wriggling in the richest earth, if hiding under leaves and logs, if fastened to a coral reef, if burrowed down in mucky bogs. Okay, let's pause because I already noticed something. Sorry. Look at this repetition right here. If. There's even an if here, and if here, and an if here. So on my elements of poetry, I'm going to put repetition. And I'm going to put that so right here, I should have put 3 stanzas. Repetition, I'm going to put that they repeated if. So the purpose of, or what repetition is it shows importance, and that is on our anchor chart for today, but it shows importance. That if, that must be calling our attention to something and making us see that it's important. I noticed one more thing, but I'm going to finish reading the poem and we're going to do 2 more at the end. So let's keep reading. If writhing in a swimming pool, or in a collie's water dish, or in a sparrow's concrete bath, if in the guts of cat or fish, if buried in the mud or sand, if lurking in the deepest seas, why not beneath the glacial ice, helped by their own antifreeze? So I know there were a lot of big words in there, but I did notice something right here, logs and bogs. That rhymes. Dish and fish, that rhymes. And seas and antifreeze, that rhymes. Now, not every line rhymes, but 2 of them do, right? So I see rhyming words, and rhyming has our stressed syllables at the end of the line when you have those rhyming words. So as I'm going through, I'm going to try to find one more. And I think if hiding fastened through, I'm going to do this one. And let me erase a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to do mucky bogs. Mucky bogs. So to me, mucky bogs shows me, and you might not know what that is, but that shows me imagery. And when I think of mucky bogs, just think of the word mucky. What do you picture when you hear mucky? Gross and nasty, right? Something really nasty. So that shows me imagery. And remember, imagery is when they use your 5 senses to help us picture something. So it helps us picture what we read. So I have found that in our poem. The first thing that you're going to find super easy is those stanzas. So let me show you what your poem looks like today. It is called Beachin', and it looks like this. You should be able to see those stanzas clear off the bat. I showed you a ton of alliteration in there. Check and see if there's any rhyming words. Check and see if there's any of these elements of poetry, and you're going to do just what I did. You're going to write the poetry element, and you're going to tell me the purpose. You do have to find 4 elements of poetry and what their purpose is. All right, guys, remember, if you have any questions, your teachers are here for you. You just got to hop on Zoom during help time or message them on Canvas, and they will be happy to help you. And for my class, I am happy to help you anytime. So just get on Canvas, get on Zoom, and let me know. All right, I love y'all, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.